Greetings, cozy knights. Lower your swords and rest by the fire. Tonight, we journey through the arcane secrets and mystical wonders of Skyrim's magical realm. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're listening from tonight. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next adventure. The Vanish School. When you explore Skyrim's magical landscape, you encounter 5 distinct schools of magic: destruction, restoration, alteration, illusion, and conjuration. But seasoned Elder Scrolls veterans might notice something missing. In Oblivion and earlier games, there existed a 6th school called mysticism. This entire branch of magic was completely removed from Skyrim, and its spells were redistributed among the remaining schools. Telekinesis, soul trap, and detection spells all found new homes in different magical disciplines. The decision to eliminate mysticism reflected Bethesda's desire to streamline the magic system, but it also removed a conceptually unique school that dealt with manipulating the very fabric of reality itself. Players who specialized in mysticism in previous games had to completely rethink their magical approaches when Skyrim arrived. Armor's non-penalty. Unlike previous Elder Scrolls games where wearing heavy armor would significantly penalize your spellcasting abilities, Skyrim made a revolutionary change. You can wear full plate armor and cast spells just as effectively as if you were wearing robes. The only exception exists within the alteration skill tree, where the mage armor perks specifically require you to avoid wearing armor to gain their defensive bonuses. This change opened up entirely new character build possibilities, allowing players to create battle mages who could withstand physical punishment while hurling devastating spells. The game's designers wanted to encourage experimentation and hybrid playstyles rather than forcing pure specialization. The free casting secret. Through careful planning and dedication to enchanting, you can achieve something remarkable in Skyrim. By reaching 100 in enchanting and taking specific perks including Enchanter at all 5 ranks, Insightful Enchanter, and Extra Effect, you can enchant 4 pieces of equipment with 25% cost reduction for a specific school of magic. When you equip a helmet, chest piece, ring, and amulet, all enchanted this way, you reach 100% cost reduction. This means you can cast spells from that school infinitely without ever depleting your magicka pool. Combine this with the extra effect perk, and you can have free casting in 2 different schools simultaneously. Destruction mages particularly benefit from this setup, enabling them to rain down endless elemental fury upon their enemies. Combat regeneration difference. When you enter combat in Skyrim, an invisible switch flips that affects magicka regeneration. Player characters experience reduced magicka regeneration during combat situations, forcing them to manage their spell resources more carefully during fights. However, this penalty doesn't apply equally to everyone in the game world. NPC mages can regenerate their magicka at full speed, even while actively engaged in combat, giving them a significant advantage in prolonged magical duels. This discrepancy explains why enemy mages seem to cast spells endlessly, while you struggle to maintain your magical assault. The developers implemented this to make mage opponents more challenging and dangerous, but it creates an uneven playing field that many players never consciously notice. The twin casting mechanic. Holding down both trigger buttons simultaneously to dual cast the same spell creates more than just double damage. When you dual cast most spells, they receive a damage multiplier of 2.2, rather than simply doubling from 2 to 4. This means dual casting actually produces 10% more damage than casting the spell twice separately would generate. Additionally, dual cast spells gain an impact effect that can stagger opponents, interrupting their attacks and creating breathing room in combat. The stagger becomes particularly valuable against dangerous enemies like dragons or powerful mages who might otherwise overwhelm you with their own magical assault. However, dual casting consumes slightly more than twice the magicka cost, creating an interesting tactical decision about when to dual cast versus alternating between hands. The destruction damage problem. As your destruction skill increases from 15 to 100, the base damage of your spells doesn't change at all. A novice level flame spell deals 8 points of damage per second, whether your destruction skill sits at 15 or at 100. The only way to increase spell damage comes through taking the specific damage boosting perks in the destruction tree, like Augmented Flames, Augmented Frost, or Augmented Shock. Each rank of these perks adds 25% more damage to that element, eventually doubling your output with both ranks. This creates a situation where dedicated destruction mages must invest heavily in perks to remain competitive, while weapon users see their damage increase naturally through both skill improvements and weapon quality upgrades. The Fortify Restoration Loop. An unintended interaction between enchanting and alchemy creates one of Skyrim's most notorious exploits. By enchanting gear with Fortify Alchemy, then using that gear to create Fortify enchanting potions, then using those potions to create better Fortify Alchemy gear, you can spiral into exponentially increasing bonuses. But here's where it gets truly broken. Fortify Restoration potions don't just boost healing spells. They boost all active magical effects on your character when consumed, including your enchanted gear bonuses. This means you can create Fortify Restoration, potions of increasingly ridiculous strength, drink them, and temporarily have armor enchantments that reduce spell costs by thousands of %, or increase your smithing to absurd values. Players have used this to create weapons dealing millions of damage or armor with defense ratings in the billions. The Quiet Casting Power. Deep in the illusion skill tree lies the Quiet Casting perk, which causes all spells from the illusion school to be cast silently. But the perk description undersells its true power. Quiet casting actually affects every single spell from every school of magic in the game. Destruction spells, conjuration summons, restoration heals, alteration utilities, and illusion effects all become completely silent when this perk is active. For stealth mages, this perk transforms from merely useful to absolutely essential. You can stand in shadows and hurl fireballs at enemies without ever breaking your sneak state from the sound of spell casting itself. The spell's impact might still alert enemies, but the casting itself remains perfectly silent. The Paralysis Duration Mystery. The Paralysis spell and effect in Skyrim operate on strange temporal mechanics that confuse many players. When you hit an enemy with paralysis, they freeze in place for the listed duration, seemingly straightforward enough. However, the duration doesn't count down in real time. Instead, the paralysis timer only decreases while the target is actually conscious and aware. This means if you paralyze an enemy and then put them to sleep with a fury spell, the paralysis duration pauses until they wake up. Additionally, paralyzed enemies are treated as unconscious for the purposes of sneak attacks, allowing you to deal massive sneak attack multipliers to completely helpless foes. The combination of paralysis and sneak attack bonuses creates devastating synergies for certain character builds. The college's hidden chests. Beneath the floors of the College of Winterhold, 4 hidden chests contain high-level magical gear, organized by School of Magic. These chests sit below the actual accessible areas, technically outside the playable space. On PC, players can use console commands to pass through solid surfaces and access these chests directly, looting powerful robes, spell tomes, soul gems, and other valuable magical items long before they should be available. On consoles, occasional bugs in the texture loading system sometimes leave gaps in the floor that reveal these chests, and quick-fingered players can loot them by crouching and reaching through the broken floor tiles without actually falling through. All items from these chests are marked as stolen property, but that rarely stops determined mages from claiming their premature rewards. The Soul Trap training method. Casting Soul Trap on already dead corpses shouldn't work and shouldn't provide any benefit, but Skyrim systems don't check whether the target is actually alive. This creates an incredibly efficient method for training conjuration. You can find any corpse, repeatedly cast Soul Trap on it, and watch your conjuration skill climb rapidly. The spell costs very little magicka at base levels, and with some magicka regeneration enhancements, you can spam the spell endlessly. Players have used this technique to max out conjuration in mere minutes, standing over a dead body and binding its already departed soul over and over. The technique works even better if you dual cast the spell, as dual casting provides more experience per cast despite consuming more magicka. The bound weapon damage scaling. When you conjure a bound weapon with the bound sword, bound battle axe, or bound bow spells, you're creating a weightless version of a Daedric weapon. Without any perks, these weapons deal damage equivalent to Daedric weapons, which are among the strongest in the game. But here's where it gets interesting. Bound weapons benefit from all the damage perks in their respective weapon skill trees. A bound sword gains the full benefit of all 5 ranks of the one-handed damage perks. The Mystic Binding perk then adds additional damage on top of that. By the time you've invested in both weapon perks and conjuration perks, bound weapons can match or exceed most physical weapons in the game, with the added benefit of weighing nothing in your inventory. The Turn Undead Panic. When you cast Turn Undead, or its more powerful variants on undead enemies, something interesting happens in their programming. The undead don't just run away randomly. They actively seek out dark areas or corners to hide in, demonstrating a surprisingly sophisticated AI behavior. Draugr will flee into shadowy alcoves, while vampire thralls will retreat into side chambers if available. The spell essentially triggers a fear response that includes environment-aware pathfinding. However, during this panic state, the undead also ignore other threats, meaning your followers or summoned creatures get free attacks against them. The tactical applications become particularly evident in dungeons with tight corridors, where turning undead effectively removes them from combat while your allies clean up. The Cloak Spell Betrayal. The various cloak spells like Flame Cloak, Frost Cloak, and Lightning Cloak create a damaging aura around your character that harms nearby enemies. However, these spells have an unexpected interaction with your summoned creatures and reanimated dead. If you cast any cloak spell while you have an active summon or raised corpse, the spell will immediately dismiss your conjured ally. The game treats the cloak effect as a hostile action that severs your connection to your conjured creatures. Curiously, the reverse doesn't hold true. If you have an active cloak and then summon a creature, both effects persist without issue. The Elemental Potency perk partially fixes this problem for elemental summons, but other conjured allies remain vulnerable to dismissal. In the depths, beneath the College of Winterhold, you encounter the Augur of Dunlen, a strange entity that appears as a floating, glowing form of pure magical energy. Tolfdir briefly mentions that the augur was once a student at the college who somehow fused with magical energies during an experiment gone wrong. But the game never explains exactly what happened or what spell the student was attempting to cast. The other college members refused to discuss the augur in any detail, suggesting either deep shame or deep fear about the incident. The augur speaks in riddles and seems to exist outside normal time, offering guidance during the college questline. Whatever transformation occurred clearly granted the former student immense knowledge and power, but at the cost of their physical form and possibly their sanity. The Secret of Arcana Glitch, one of the black books from the Dragonborn DLC, offers an ability called Secret of Arcana, which grants 30 seconds of infinite magicka casting. This alone would be powerful, but a glitch elevates it to absurdity. If you activate Secret of Arcana and then start continuously casting any channeled spell, like flames or healing, the infinite magicka effect doesn't end when 30 seconds expire. As long as you maintain the continuous cast, you can keep channeling the spell indefinitely. Players discovered they could then fast travel while maintaining the channeled spell, which tricks the game into thinking they use the spell continuously during the entire fast travel journey. Fast traveling from Solitude to Riften, the furthest possible distance, while casting a spell grants an enormous amount of skill experience, potentially maxing out destruction or restoration in a single fast travel. The Master Spell quest requirements. To learn the Master level spells in any school of magic, you can't simply buy them from a vendor once your skill reaches 90. Instead, you must complete a special ritual quest for each school. The College of Winterhold offers these quests, but only after you reach level 90 in the relevant skill. The Destruction Ritual requires you to defeat elemental monsters with specific spell types. The Conjuration Ritual sends you to summon and bind a powerful Dremora. The Illusion Ritual involves a complex vision quest. The Restoration Ritual requires you to find and commune with the augur. The Alteration Ritual demands dragon heart scales. These quests gate the most powerful spells behind both skill investment and active effort, ensuring that only dedicated mages access the ultimate magical knowledge. The Absorption Regeneration Trick. The Guardian Circle spell creates a healing area that restores 20 health per second to anyone standing inside, while also forcing undead to flee. But an unexpected interaction occurs if you have magic absorption from the Atronach Stone or the Atronach perk. The Guardian Circle constantly heals you, and with magic absorption, you have a chance to absorb your own healing spell. When this happens, instead of restoring health, the absorbed spell restores magicka. With high magic absorption chance, standing in your own Guardian Circle becomes a magicka fountain that can restore hundreds of points of magicka per second. This transforms the spell from a defensive healing tool into an offensive magicka generation engine, enabling you to rain down destruction spells endlessly while standing in your circle. The Mayhem Effect level cap. The Master level illusion spell. Mayhem causes all creatures and people up to level 25 within a large area to attack each other in a chaotic melee. The spell description clearly states this level 25 limit. However, with the Master of the Mind perk, which allows illusion spells to affect undead, Daedra, and automatons, Mayhem becomes dramatically more powerful. The perk doesn't just add those creature types to the spell's targeting, it also bypasses level restrictions for those creature types entirely. A level 100 Dremora or Ancient Dragon can be caught in Mayhem's effect, turning entire dungeon populations into a massive free-for-all while you watch from safety. combination turns one of Skyrim's most chaotic spells into an absolute room-clearing tool. The staff enchanting requirement. You can enchant weapons and armor at any enchanting table once you've learned the appropriate enchantments. But staff enchanting operates under entirely different rules. To enchant staves, you need to access the staff enchanter, a special crafting station found only in Tel Mithrin on Solstheim in the Dragonborn DLC. The staff enchanter requires special materials called heartstones, along with filled soul gems, to create enchanted staves. Unlike weapon enchanting, where you can apply any known enchantment to any weapon, staff enchanting has preset combinations. Specific spells can only be applied to specific staff types. The system feels deliberately restrictive compared to normal enchanting, likely because staves allow any character to cast spells regardless of their magicka pool or magical skills. The slow time exploit. The slow time shout creates interesting interactions with magic that the developers never fully anticipated. When you activate slow time, everything in the game world slows down dramatically, including your own movement and attack speeds. However, the speed at which your spells travel doesn't slow down proportionally. A fireball spell cast during slow time moves at close to normal speed relative to everything else, meaning it appears to travel incredibly fast to any observer. More importantly, you can activate slow time, throw several spells, then wait for time to resume. The spells will all be in flight when normal time resumes, creating a delayed barrage effect. Dragon fights become particularly manageable when you can launch 6 lightning bolts during stop time, then watch them all strike simultaneously when time resumes. The Fortify Magicka Mystery. Fortify Magicka enchantments increase your maximum magicka pool by a flat amount. Fortify Magicka regeneration enchantments increase the rate at which your magicka recovers. But these two enchantments interact with each other in unexpected ways. If you have a large magicka pool from Fortify Magicka enchantments, the absolute amount of magicka you regenerate per second increases even if your regeneration rate stays the same. Conversely, Fortify Magicka regeneration becomes dramatically more effective the larger your magicka pool is. The two enchantments multiply each other's benefits rather than simply adding. A character with both high magicka and high regeneration can recover their entire spell casting pool in seconds, while a character with only one or the other struggles with resource management. The Detect Life training. The Detect Life spell in Alteration reveals living creatures through walls within a large radius. The spell costs moderate magicka to cast and lasts for a decent duration. But here's the clever part. Every second that Detect Life remains active while detecting living creatures, it grants Alteration experience. You don't need to be in combat. You don't need to actively do anything. Just stand in a populated area like a major city, cast Detect Life, and watch your Alteration skill climb. Whiterun's Market District during the day provides an ideal training ground. Cast Detect Life, detect dozens of NPCs simultaneously, and gain Alteration experience for each detected target every second. Players have used this to power level Alteration from 15 to 100 in a single in-game day. The Bound Arrows glitch. When you conjure a bound bow, it automatically creates 100 bound arrows in your inventory. These arrows are technically separate items from the bow itself, even though they're magically created. If you look in your inventory while the bound bow is active, you'll see the arrows listed. Here's where clever players found an exploit. You can equip a different type of arrow while the bound bow is active. The game gets confused. and allows you to fire these physical arrows from your magical bow. And those arrows don't consume charges or disappear. Even better, if you have powerful enchanted arrows like Daedric arrows with special effects, you can fire them from the weightless, powerful bound bow. The glitch essentially gives you an endlessly usable Daedric bow that weighs nothing and requires no maintenance, the Ash Shell duration. The Dragonborn DLC added the Ash Shell spell, which encases targets in stone for 30 seconds at the base level. During this time, the target is completely invulnerable to all damage and cannot move or act. The spell seems purely defensive, useful for temporarily removing dangerous enemies from combat. But clever players realize something. The 30-second timer doesn't count down if nobody attacks the target. If you Ash Shell an enemy and then completely ignore them, they can remain encased for minutes or even hours. Some players have Ash Shelled enemies at the start of dungeons, cleared the entire rest of the dungeon, then returned to find the enemy still frozen in stone. The spell becomes a bizarre time stop effect rather than a temporary disable. The Sanguine Rose power. The Sanguine Rose is a Daedric artifact staff that summons a Dremora for 60 seconds. This seems straightforward until you examine what type of Dremora it summons. At lower levels, the staff summons a basic Dremora, but at higher levels, it summons a Dremora Marquinaz, one of the most powerful summonable creatures in the game. The Marquinaz wields a powerful weapon, knows advanced spells, and has enormous health pools. For a staff that recharges with soul gems like any other, being able to summon such a powerful ally on demand makes the Sanguine Rose one of the most valuable items in any mage's arsenal. The Daedric quest to obtain it is relatively simple, just a drunken romp, making it one of the easiest ways to gain access to master-level conjuration effects without actually knowing master-level spells. The illusion difficulty curve. Illusion spells have level caps that determine which enemies they can affect. Calm works on enemies up to level 9. Fear works on enemies up to level 10 at its base form. As you find more powerful versions of these spells, the level caps increase, but never quite fast enough to keep pace with the enemies you're facing. This creates a frustrating difficulty curve for illusion specialists, where their spells become increasingly ineffective as they progress through the game. The solution lies in the illusion skill's dual casting stagger effect and the Kindred Mage perk. Dual casting an illusion spell effectively adds 10 levels to its cap. The various illusion perks add additional levels to specific spell types. By combining dual casting with full perk investment, you can make even apprentice-level spells affect high-level enemies. The Ebony Flesh strategy. The Ebony Flesh spell provides 100 points of armor rating for 60 seconds, making it one of the most powerful defensive spells in the game. But armor rating in Skyrim has a cap at 567, which translates to 80% physical damage reduction. Light armor users can hit this cap relatively easily through armor pieces and perks. Heavy armor users reach it almost automatically, but pure mages wearing robes start with nearly 0 armor rating. Ebony Flesh, plus the mage armor perks, brings robe-wearing mages close to the armor cap, providing the same physical damage reduction as the tankiest heavy armor warriors. The spell effectively turns cloth robes into impenetrable barriers for its duration. Strategic casting before combat essentially removes physical damage as a concern for prepared mages. The summoning ritual details. The conjuration ritual quest for Master Spell requires you to summon an unbound Dremora and defeat it in combat. This sounds straightforward, but the quest has fascinating implications. The ritual involves using an ancient Daedric technique to summon a Dremora without binding it to your will, allowing it to manifest with its full power and free will. The Dremora you summon is aggressive and powerful, as you'd expect from an unbound demon. But if you complete the quest and later acquire the Master Conjuration spells, you're using that same Daedric knowledge in a more refined form. The Flame Thrall spell permanently summons a Flame Atronach that serves you loyally. The difference between bound and unbound summons reflects a mage's mastery over Daedric entities. The Lightning Chain reaction. Lightning spells in Skyrim have a hidden secondary effect beyond their direct damage. When a lightning spell strikes an enemy who is near water or standing in water, the spell gains a slight area effect, chaining damage to other nearby enemies. The effect isn't huge, but in rainstorms or near bodies of water, lightning spells effectively become area of effect attacks. This chain lightning effect combines excellently with the Disintegrate perk, which causes enemies killed by lightning spells to disintegrate into ash piles. Imagine fighting a group of bandits near a stream. One well-placed thunderbolt spell chains between them, dropping several to low health, and those that die disintegrate spectacularly. The combination creates visual and mechanical satisfaction that makes lightning the strongest element in many situations. The Voice of the Sky interaction. After completing a specific quest at the throat of the world, you can meditate on a word of power with Paarthurnax to receive a blessing called Voice of the Sky. This blessing makes animals non-hostile to you for a day. The unexpected interaction comes with conjuration spells. If you have Voice of the Sky active and encounter hostile animals like wolves or bears, you can use Calm or Fear spells on them without breaking the blessing. The animals will respond to your illusion magic as if they weren't hostile to begin with. This creates interesting possibilities for wildlife control without needing to kill animals, useful for role-playing hunters or druids who want to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. The enchanting loot materials. To create powerful enchantments, you need large soul gems filled with grand souls. Obtaining these in quantities becomes one of the main challenges for master enchanters. The most efficient farming method involves two factors: the bound bow and mammoths. Mammoths are non-hostile unless attacked, making them easy targets. They always carry grand souls, and the bound bow with the Soul Stealer perk automatically soul traps enemies killed with it, eliminating the need to cast Soul Trap manually. You can visit mammoth spawns like the ones near Whiterun, summon your bound bow, down a mammoth, and collect a grand soul. The materials investment is zero beyond the magicka to cast the bow, creating an infinitely repeatable soul farming method. The spell absorption stacking. Several effects in Skyrim provide spell absorption chance. The Atronach Stone, the Atronach perk in Alteration, and various enchanted items. Each source stacks additively, allowing you to reach 100% spell absorption if you combine them all. With total spell absorption, enemy spells don't just fail to harm you, they restore your magicka instead. Enemy mages become walking magicka batteries that empower you with every spell they cast. Dragon Breath attacks restore magicka. Magical traps in dungeons, your spell pool. The only downside is that you also absorb beneficial spells, making it impossible for followers or allies to heal you with restoration magic. The trade-off usually favors absorption, as enemy mages pose more threat than lost healing opportunities. The Fireball impact physics. When you cast Fireball or Ice Storm and the projectile explodes, the blast creates actual physics forces that affect objects and NPCs in the area. Bodies fly through the air, small objects scatter. The explosion isn't just a visual effect but an actual physics event in the game engine. This leads to emergent gameplay moments where a fireball not only damages enemies but launches them off cliffs or into each other. In narrow corridors, the physics forces can pin multiple enemies against walls, dealing additional collision damage. Some creative players have used explosive spells to solve jumping puzzles, blasting themselves across gaps that would otherwise require careful platforming. The physics interactions make combat feel more dynamic and unpredictable than simple damage numbers would suggest. The destruction dual casting stagger. When you dual cast destruction spells like Fireball or Ice Spike, they gain an impact effect that can stagger enemies, interrupting their actions. This stagger effect becomes particularly valuable against enemy mages and archers. A staggered enemy mage drops their spell without casting it, forcing them to start their cast again. Dragon breath attacks can be interrupted mid-animation. Melee enemies suffer delays in their attack patterns. The stagger essentially functions as a form of crowd control that pure single-hand casting lacks. Against powerful single opponents like giants or dragon priests, the ability to consistently interrupt their most dangerous attacks through dual cast stagger can mean the difference between victory and reloading a save. The transmute spell economy. The transmute spell in Alteration is ostensibly designed to help you level Alteration by converting iron ore into silver ore and silver ore into gold ore. But it has massive implications for your economy. Iron ore is abundant and cheap throughout Skyrim. Gold ore sells for significant amounts. By mining iron, transmuting it to gold, smithing it into jewelry, and enchanting that jewelry, you create an incredibly profitable loop. A few hours spent mining and transmuting can generate more gold than most quest lines. The spell essentially breaks the game's economy, allowing you to afford any equipment, training, or house you desire. Some players consider using transmute to be borderline exploitative, while others see it as a legitimate application of magical knowledge for profit. The ice form Complete Freeze. The ice form Shout encases targets in ice for a duration based on how many words you use. While encased, enemies cannot move, cannot be damaged, and are essentially removed from combat temporarily. This sounds similar to paralyze effects, but ice form works on enemies that are immune to paralysis. Dragon priests, which resist or completely ignore most crowd control effects, get frozen solid by ice form. Giants and mammoths, which shrug off paralyzed poisons, freeze when hit with the shout. The shout doesn't technically count as magic, so enemies with magic resistance or absorption don't get any protection. For mages who invested in illusion but find their crowd control spells failing against certain enemies, ice form provides a reliable alternative that works on virtually everything. The conjured creature Permanent Death. When you summon a creature like a flame Atronach or a frost Atronach, it fights for you until the spell duration expires or until it's killed. If the creature dies during the summon duration, you can immediately resummon a fresh one. But the Master Conjuration Thrall spells like Flame Thrall work differently. Thralls are permanent summons that persist indefinitely until killed. And here's the critical difference. If your Thrall dies, you cannot cast the spell again until 24 hours pass in game time. The spell doesn't just need to recharge like a normal spell. It has a 1-day cooldown. This limitation means losing your Thrall in a difficult fight can seriously impact your combat effectiveness. Many conjuration specialists keep the Thrall safely in the rear while using temporary summons for frontline combat. treating the thrall more like a persistent magical artillery platform. The Soul Trap level inconsistency. Soul Trap is classified as an apprentice-level conjuration spell, which suggests it's a fairly advanced magical technique. But mechanically, you can access Soul Trap extremely early in the game, and most vendors who sell spells will offer it at low levels. The classification feels inconsistent with how fundamental soul trapping is to enchanting, one of the crafting skills. Novice level classification would make more sense, given how essential the spell is for any character interested in enchanting. The discrepancy suggests the developers initially planned to gate enchanting behind higher level magical knowledge, then change course to make crafting more accessible. The result is that Soul Trap's apprentice classification feels arbitrary rather than meaningful. The command, Daedra Hidden Power. The command, Daedra spell, lets you take control of Summon Daedra, turning enemy summons into your allies. Against enemy conjurers, this spell can completely swing the tactical situation, stealing their summoned Remora or Atronak and adding it to your forces. But the spell has a hidden use that many players never discover. If you use Command Daedra on a Daedra, and then the summoner dismisses or loses control of it, the Daedra doesn't disappear. Instead, it remains under your control until killed, or until the Command Daedra duration expires. This effectively lets you steal enemy summons permanently for the spell's duration, even if the original caster dies or de-summons them. Against enemy conjurers in sequential fights, you can build up an army by commanding each Daedra they summon. The Flames Burn bonus. Fire spells in Skyrim have a unique damage over time component that frost and shock spells lack. When you hit an enemy with a fire spell, they take immediate impact damage and then continue to burn for a few seconds afterward. The burn damage isn't huge, but it adds up over the course of a fight. More importantly, the burn effect stacks. If you continuously stream flames onto an enemy, each tick of the stream applies a new burn effect, and all of them deal damage simultaneously. An enemy caught in a sustained flames attack isn't just taking the spell's listed damage per second. They're taking that damage plus escalating burn damage from every application that hasn't ticked down yet. This multiplicative damage stacking makes continuous fire spells like Flames and Incinerate particularly devastating if you can maintain the stream. The invisibility detection mystery. When you cast invisibility, most enemies lose track of you completely if you're not already detected. But certain enemies seem to have enhanced detection even against invisible characters. Farmer, despite being blind, detect invisible players through echolocation or tremor sense. Dwemer automatons have magical sensors that pierce invisibility. Dragons have keen senses that detect even invisible enemies at close range. But the strangest invisibility interaction involves dead bodies. If you turn invisible and a nearby NPC saw you kill someone, they'll investigate the body and sometimes can still pinpoint your exact location, even though you're invisible. The game tracks last known position separately from current position, and NPCs investigating crimes will walk directly to where you were when you killed their ally, regardless of invisibility. The spell tome disintegration. Unlike skill books, which remain in the world after reading, spell tomes completely vanish when you learn the spell they contain. The tome disintegrates in your hands as the magical knowledge transfers directly into your mind. This creates an interesting limitation. If you want multiple characters to learn the same spell from the same tome, you need to find multiple copies of that tome. Followers can't learn spells from tomes you've already used. You can't stockpile knowledge in a library at your house. The magical knowledge is single use, transferred through a one-time destructive reading. This makes rare spell tomes particularly valuable and encourages exploration to find every copy of desirable spells scattered across Skyrim. The water-breathing permanent effect. The water-breathing spell from Alteration allows you to breathe underwater for 60 seconds, enough time to explore underwater areas or swim across deep bodies of water. But an enchanted item with water breathing operates differently. If you enchant any piece of equipment with water breathing, the effect is binary. Either you have it or you don't. There's no magnitude or duration to the enchantment. As long as you wear the enchanted item, you breathe water as easily as air, permanently. This means even a minor water-breathing enchantment on a ring grants complete underwater freedom. For explorers and treasure hunters, a single enchanted piece of equipment eliminates drowning as a concern entirely. The permanent nature makes water-breathing one of the most cost-effective utility enchantments. The Ash Rune Unique Detonation. Rune spells like Fire Rune and Frost Rune place magical traps on the ground that explode when enemies walk over them. The Dragonborn DLC added Ash Rune, which functions similarly but with a unique twist. When Ash Rune detonates, it doesn't just deal damage, it also has a chance to encase affected enemies in ash, paralyzing them for several seconds. This paralysis chance makes Ash Rune significantly more tactically valuable than the other rune spells. You can place it at choke points and doorways, and enemies who trigger it may become paralyzed in the explosion, leaving them vulnerable to follow-up attacks. The combination of area damage and potential paralysis makes it one of the strongest rune options despite being technically a DLC addition rather than a base game spell. The Mass Paralysis Targeting, the Master Level Alteration spell. Mass Paralysis affects all targets in a large area around the caster, paralyzing them for 15 seconds. The spell's area is so large that it can effectively paralyze entire rooms full of enemies simultaneously. But there's a subtle detail in how it targets. The spell affects enemies based on line of sight from the caster. If enemies are behind cover or around corners, they don't get paralyzed, even if they're within the spell's radius. This means tactical positioning before casting Mass Paralysis dramatically affects its effectiveness. Casting it from a doorway where you can see into a room full of enemies paralyzes them all. Casting it in the middle of a complex dungeon room might miss half the threats. The line of sight requirement rewards intelligent spell usage. The Telekinesis Launching. The Telekinesis spell lets you manipulate objects from a distance, picking them up and moving them around. Most players use it to grab distant items or solve puzzles, but the spell can also launch objects at high velocity if you flick your view quickly while holding something. A grabbed object follows your cursor, and rapid mouse movement translates to high object velocity. Some players have weaponized telekinesis, grabbing heavy objects and launching them at enemies for improvised ranged attacks. The damage isn't significant, but the physics impact can stagger enemies or knock them off cliffs. More entertainingly, you can use telekinesis to hurl bodies enormous distances, clearing corpses from your homes or creating bizarre crime scenes for city guards to discover. The Master Illusion Risk. The Master Illusion spells Harmony, Hysteria, and Mayhem all affect a massive area around the caster, potentially influencing dozens of NPCs simultaneously. But these spells don't discriminate between friend and foe. Casting Mayhem in a city will cause guards, civilians, and quest NPCs to start killing each other indiscriminately. Essential NPCs can't die, but they can and will attack everyone around them, including you. The aftermath of a carelessly cast Master Illusion spell in a populated area can completely break quest lines and turn entire towns hostile. The power of these spells comes with enormous responsibility. Master Illusion specialists need to carefully consider their surroundings before unleashing area-wide mind control effects. The Bound Dagger's Silent Step. The Dragonborn DLC added the Bound Dagger spell, creating a weightless conjured dagger for combat. Daggers in Skyrim receive massive sneak attack multipliers, and the Bound Dagger benefits from all of them. But there's a bug in the Bound Dagger's animation files. The spell accidentally assigns sword animations to the dagger, making it less stealthy than it should be. The unofficial patch fixes this, but in the base game, the Bound Dagger actually makes more noise during sneaking than it should. Despite this bug, the dagger remains valuable for sneak characters due to its weightlessness and automatic soul trap potential with the Soul Stealer perk. The combination of free weapon and automatic soul collection makes it worth using even with the animation problems. The stability perk effect. Deep in the alteration tree sits the stability perk, which increases the duration of all alteration spells by 50%. This might seem minor for short duration spells, but it dramatically affects utility spells. Water breathing goes from 60 to 90 seconds. Paralysis lasts 22 seconds instead of 15. Candlelight remains active for 4.5 minutes rather than 3. For mage armor spells like Stone Flesh or Ebony Flesh, the 50% duration increase means you can maintain protective magic with fewer recasts, conserving magicka over long dungeon delves. The perk's value increases dramatically for players who heavily utilize alteration for utility rather than just combat buffs. The Atronach Forge Conjuration. Hidden beneath the College of Winterhold in the Midden lies the Atronach Forge, a magical device capable of creating items, including spell tomes. By placing specific combinations of items in the Forge's offering box, you can conjure spell tomes for various conjuration spells without purchasing them. The recipes require soul gems, alchemical ingredients, and other magical materials. Successfully using the Forge to create a spell tome provides that tome without any gold cost. Though the material investment can be significant, the Forge represents an alternative path to learning conjuration magic, particularly valuable if you've antagonized the college or want to learn spells before reaching the skill levels where merchants stock them. The Dremora Merchant Summon. Hidden within the Daedric quest for Hermaeus Mora, you can obtain the ability to summon a Dremora merchant anywhere in the game world. This special summon doesn't fight for you. Instead, it offers trading services, buying and selling items with you regardless of your location. The Dremora carries 2,000 gold for purchases and stocks various magical items. For players deep in dungeons with overfilled inventories, being able to summon a merchant to sell excess loot solves encumbrance problems instantly. The ability also allows you to access merchant services in areas where no normal merchants exist, like deep in Dwemer ruins or high on mountain peaks. The summoning has a brief cooldown between uses, but the convenience makes it invaluable for any character. The Ignite Fire over time. The Ignite spell from the Dragonborn DLC looks unremarkable at first glance. It's an expert-level destruction spell that deals modest direct damage and applies a fire damage over time effect. But Ignite has a unique property. Its burn effect stacks with itself much more aggressively than other fire spells. If you repeatedly cast Ignite on the same target, the burn damage escalates exponentially. Within a few casts, Enemies are taking hundreds of points of fire damage per second purely from the stacking burn effects. This makes Ignite one of the highest damage per magicka spells in the entire game against single targets that survive long enough for the burns to stack. Dragons and giants fall remarkably quickly to sustained Ignite assault. The Lightning Storm channel. Lightning Storm is the master level lightning destruction spell, creating a continuous beam of electricity that deals high damage. Unlike other spells which cast instantly, Lightning Storm channels continuously for as long as you hold the cast button and have sufficient magicka. The beam tracks moving targets automatically as long as you keep them in your view, making it highly effective against flying dragons or fast-moving enemies. But the channeling nature means you're locked in place and vulnerable while casting. The tactical decision becomes whether the enormous damage output justifies the immobility. Against groups of weak enemies, instant cast spells clear rooms faster. Against single tough opponents like dragons or dragon priests, Lightning Storm's sustained damage often proves superior. The Soul Gem size manipulation. When you soul trap an enemy and fill a soul gem, the game automatically places the soul in the smallest gem that can hold it. A petty soul goes into a petty soul gem if available, even if you're carrying empty grand soul gems. This automatic sorting helps prevent wasting large soul gems on small souls. But you can manipulate this system. If you want to fill larger soul gems, drop or store all your smaller empty gems before soul trapping. The game will then be forced to use the larger gems for small souls. This matters because filled soul gems have value regardless of soul size, and a filled grand soul gem can be dropped to empty it, letting you try for a grand soul on your next capture. The system rewards players who understand and manipulate soul gem mechanics. The Spell Absorption Ward Bypass. Ward spells create magical shields that absorb incoming spell damage up to a certain threshold. Lesser Ward absorbs 40 points of spell damage, Steadfast Ward absorbs 60, and Greater Ward absorbs 80. Against weak enemy mages, wards provide perfect protection. But wards have a critical weakness. They don't interact with spell absorption at all. If an enemy has any spell absorption chance, your ward is useless. The spell either hits normally or gets absorbed and restores the enemy's magicka. Against archmages or mages using the Atronach stone, your carefully timed ward deployment does nothing. This creates an interesting dynamic where wards excel against some magical threats, but fail completely against others. The Ritual Stone Mass Reanimation. The Ritual Stone Standing Stone power reanimates all nearby corpses to fight for you until they're killed again. The power has a once per day limitation, but within that constraint, it's incredibly powerful. In the aftermath of a large battle, activating the Ritual Stone can raise a small army of zombies from the fallen combatants. The reanimated dead don't count against your normal conjuration summon limit, meaning you can have your summoned flame Atronach and 10 zombie warriors all fighting simultaneously. The mass reanimation makes the Ritual Stone one of the best standing stone choices for any character build, not just dedicated necromancers. The tactical application is obvious. Fight a group of enemies, kill several, retreat, activate Ritual Stone, return with an undead army reinforcing you. The invisibility arrow release. When you cast invisibility, any hostile action breaks the effect immediately. Attacking, casting aggressive spells, or even activating certain objects ends your invisibility. But there's a subtle mechanical quirk with bows. When you draw a bow while invisible, you remain invisible. You can even aim and acquire your Target while invisible. Invisibility only breaks at the moment the arrow actually releases. This gives invisible archers a significant advantage. You can get into perfect position, draw your bow, line up a headshot on an unaware enemy, and the invisibility breaks only as the arrow flies. The enemy has no chance to react before the arrow lands. This timing difference makes invisibility particularly powerful for archer builds compared to melee or magic users. The muffle movement speed. The muffle spell makes your movement completely silent for 3 minutes, preventing enemies from hearing your footsteps regardless of what armor you're wearing. The spell is invaluable for stealth characters, but it has an additional hidden benefit. While muffle is active, you can move at full speed even while sneaking, and enemies hear absolutely nothing. Normally, moving faster while sneaking makes you easier to detect through sound. Muffle removes this penalty entirely. You can sprint through dungeons in sneak mode, remaining undetected purely through the silence effect. This dramatically speeds up stealth gameplay, allowing you to move between shadow patches or cover points at full movement speed instead of crawling slowly forward. The Call to Arms Forgotten spell. Call to Arms is an illusion spell that makes nearby allies fight better, increasing their combat stat significantly for 10 minutes. The spell affects all nearby friendly characters, including followers, summoned creatures, and even neutral NPCs if they're fighting enemies. In large battles, like the Civil War sieges, casting Call to Arms on your army before engaging the enemy can swing the entire battle. The statistical increases stack with other buffs, and the 10-minute duration ensures the spell remains active through multiple encounters. Despite its power, Call to Arms sees little use because most players don't realize how dramatically it affects combat effectiveness, or because they don't travel with multiple followers to benefit from the area buff. The Firestorm's self-damage. Firestorm is the master-level fire destruction spell, creating a massive explosion of flames centered on the caster. The explosion deals heavy fire damage to all enemies in a very large radius. But the spells centered on caster design creates a significant risk. You are not immune to your own spell. If you don't have high fire resistance, Firestorm damages you along with your enemies. This self-damage potential makes the spell dangerous to use in close quarters. Some players enchant fire resistance gear specifically to enable safe Firestorm usage. Others use the Become Ethereal Shout to gain brief invulnerability while the spell detonates. The self-damage risk creates tactical decision-making around when and where to unleash one of the game's most powerful spells. The Vampire Drain, Scaling. Vampires in Skyrim can use the Vampire Seduction and Vampiric Drain abilities. Vampiric Drain is a channeled absorption spell that damages enemies and restores the vampire's health simultaneously. But the spell has unusual scaling. As you progress through vampire stages, growing more powerful and more vampiric, Vampiric Drain increases in strength significantly. By the 4th stage of vampirism, Vampiric Drain deals damage comparable to expert-level destruction spells, while healing you for the full damage amount. This makes vampiric player characters incredibly durable in combat, able to heal through incoming damage by draining their enemies. The scaling means that being a vampire provides tangible magical benefits beyond the stat boost, particularly for magic-focused vampire builds. The slow fall damage prevention. While there's no dedicated slow fall spell in Skyrim like in previous Elder Scrolls games, you can replicate the effect using the Become Ethereal Shout. When you activate Become Ethereal and then jump from any height, You take no full damage because you're immune to all damage while ethereal. This allows you to drop from the throats of mountains into valleys below, bypassing entire sections of terrain by simply jumping off cliffs. The ethereal effect lasts long enough at 3 words of power that you can fall from the highest points in Skyrim safely. Mages without the become ethereal shout often rely on creative use of alteration spells like Paralyze, cast on themselves just before landing, which technically prevents full damage through a strange mechanical interaction. The Conjure Dremora Lord Power. The Dremora Lord Summon is one of the most powerful creatures you can conjure in Skyrim. The Dremora Lord wears heavy armor, wields a greatsword, knows destruction spells, and possesses enormous health. When summoned, it announces its presence with memorable combat dialogue like, "I honor my lord by destroying you." The Dremora Lord serves as an exceptionally durable tank, drawing enemy aggression while dealing significant damage. For conjurers who take the Twin Souls perk, summoning 2 Dremora Lords simultaneously creates a nearly unstoppable combat force. The 2 demons can lock down entire groups of enemies through their combined melee pressure, spell damage, and ability to absorb punishment that would destroy lesser summons. The Enchanting Learning Curve. Learning enchantments for use in enchanting requires finding enchanted items and disenchanting them. Each enchantment can only be learned once, creating a scavenger hunt across Skyrim to collect every possible enchantment type. But some enchantments are incredibly rare, appearing on unique items or generated randomly on boss loot. The Fortify Alchemy enchantment rarely appears on randomly generated items, forcing players to know specific locations of guaranteed Fortify Alchemy gear. The Chaos Damage enchantment only exists on Dragonborn DLC items. The Fortifier Restoration enchantment is similarly rare. Complete enchanters spend hours hunting specific dungeons and merchants to collect every possible enchantment, turning enchanting into a long-term collecting objective. The Summer Mist Creation. The various Creation Club additions to Skyrim added numerous new spells and enchantments, though their quality and balance varies. Some creations add entire quest lines involving new spell types. Others simply dump new spell tomes into merchant inventories. The Arcane Accessories creation added spells like Fenric's Welcome, which grants 5 seconds of invisibility and automatically unlocks expert level locks. The utility of such highly specific spells creates debate within the community about whether they improve the magic system or trivialize certain challenges. The modding community has created similar spell additions that are free, leading to questions about the value proposition of paid creation content versus free mods. The Augmented Element Perks. The Destruction skill tree includes 3 sets of element-specific damage perks: Augmented Flames, Augmented Frost, and Augmented Shock. Each comes in 2 ranks that must be taken sequentially, with each rank providing 25% more damage with that element. Taking both ranks of an element perk effectively doubles your damage with that element. This creates a decision point for destruction mages. Specialize in one element and maximize that element's perks, or spread perks across elements for versatility. Specializing makes you devastatingly effective with one element, but potentially vulnerable to enemies resistant to that element. Spreading perks means you always have an effective option, but never deal maximum possible damage. The choice fundamentally defines your destruction playstyle. The Deep Freeze Execute. Taking both ranks of the Augmented Frost perks in destruction unlocks a powerful additional effect called Deep Freeze. This effect gives your frost spells a chance to freeze enemies solid, instantly killing them if their remaining health is low enough. The execution threshold scales with your level, but against weaker enemies, deep freeze can proc frequently. The visual and mechanical satisfaction of watching enemies freeze and then shatter makes frost specialization emotionally rewarding. Against groups of weak enemies, a frost mage with deep freeze can clear rooms as efficiently as a high-level warrior, turning crowds into frozen statues that shatter on death. The execute effect makes frost arguably the strongest element for handling large numbers of weak opponents. The intense flames fear effect. Similar to deep freeze for frost mages, the intense flames perk adds a powerful secondary effect to fire spells. Enemies set on fire by your spells have a chance to flee in terror as the flames consume them. The fear effect interrupts their attacks and potentially removes them from combat temporarily as they run away. Against melee enemies, this forces them to retreat, giving you space and time to prepare follow-up attacks. The synergy with fire's damage over time effect means fleeing enemies often die while running away from you, burning to death before they recover their courage. Like deep freeze, intense flames add psychological warfare to your magical arsenal beyond pure damage numbers. The disintegrate ash pile. Shock specialized destruction mages who take both augmented shock perks unlock the disintegrate effect, which turns enemies killed by shock damage into ash piles. Beyond the obvious visual satisfaction of vaporizing your enemies, this has interesting practical applications. Ash piles weigh nothing and can't be reanimated by necromancers. Corpses that would normally be raised by enemy necromancers or the player's own followers simply no longer exist after disintegration. In dungeons heavily populated by necromancers, disintegrating corpses prevents them from being turned against you. The tactical application makes shock damage particularly valuable in undead-heavy dungeons or against enemy conjurers who would otherwise turn your kills into their soldiers. The conjured creature's experience. When you summon a creature and then enter combat with that creature active, you gain conjuration experience. But the experience gain has unusual rules. If you summon a creature before combat starts and then enter combat, you get experience. But if you're already in combat and then summon, you don't get the initial experience grant. This encourages pre-buffing before fights. Summoning your Flame Atronak before alerting enemies grants experience. Summoning it mid-combat after enemies have noticed you doesn't grant the conjuration experience, though hitting enemies with your summons still levels conjuration slightly. The distinction matters for players trying to efficiently level conjuration, as combat-only summoning provides less experience than pre-combat summoning. The hidden magic armor limitation. The mage armor perks in alteration triple the effectiveness of mage armor spells like Ebony Flesh, but only if you're not wearing any armor pieces. The game checks whether you have equipped armor in specific slots. Having armor in even a single slot disables mage armor benefits entirely. This means you cannot wear a mix of armor and robes and expect mage armor to function. You're forced to commit fully to robes and accessories, or abandon mage armor perks completely. The restriction makes sense thematically, as magical force fields presumably need direct skin contact to manifest, but it prevents creative hybrid builds that mix light physical protection with magical defenses. Pure mages benefit fully, while hybrid characters must choose between armor and mage armor benefits. The candlelight navigation. The candlelight spell creates a floating ball of light that follows you around, illuminating dark areas for several minutes. The spell costs minimal magicka, and proves invaluable in dark dungeons or night exploration. But candlelight has an interesting interaction with sneaking. The bright light floating over your head makes you dramatically more visible to enemies, partially negating your sneaking ability. In darkness, enemies might not see you without the light, but with candlelight active, you're a glowing beacon that enemies spot from much further away. This creates a fundamental tension for stealth mages. Navigate in frustrating darkness to maintain stealth, or illuminate your path at the cost of being more visible. The choice depends on whether you prioritize comfort or stealth efficiency. The Dragonhide Ultimate Defense. Dragonhide is the master level alteration spell that provides 80% physical damage reduction for 30 seconds. This is the armor cap converted directly to a spell effect, making you as tough as the tankiest warrior regardless of what equipment you wear. The spell essentially grants invincibility against physical damage for its duration. Dragons, giants, and melee enemies all see their damage reduced to 20% of normal. The 30-second duration ensures it covers entire combat encounters. Strategic casting before major fights removes physical damage as a concern, allowing you to focus entirely on offensive spellcasting without worrying about being interrupted or killed. For mages in master difficulty playthroughs, Dragonhide often becomes the difference between completing difficult fights and dying repeatedly. The ward spell timing. Ward spells must be actively held up when enemy spells hit you. If you cast a ward preemptively, but then lower it before the enemy spell connects, you take full damage. This creates a skill-based timing element to ward usage. You need to anticipate when enemies will cast spells and raise your ward at the appropriate moment. Against enemy mages who charge up spells, you can see the charging animation and raise your ward in response. But against enemies casting instant spells, ward timing becomes much harder. The mechanic rewards player skill and observation, making effective ward usage feel more like active defense than passive damage reduction. Skilled mages can block tremendous amounts of spell damage by mastering ward timing. The familiar weakest summon. The familiar spell summons a ghostly wolf to fight for you. As the most basic summoning spell in Conjuration, the familiar serves as your introduction to summoning magic. But the familiar is dramatically weaker than any other summon in the game. The spectral wolf has minimal health, deals pitiful damage, and dies quickly in any serious fight. Even the novice-level Flame Atronach vastly outperforms the familiar. The familiar's role is purely educational, teaching players the basics of command and summon management. No serious conjurer continues using familiar past the earliest levels of play. The spell exists to introduce the concept of summoning without giving new players an overpowered combat tool immediately. The Banish Daedra tactical use. The Banish Daedra spell sends summoned Daedra back to oblivion, immediately removing them from combat. Against enemy conjurers, this provides enormous tactical advantage. When a conjurer summons a Flame Atronach or Dremora, you can banish it immediately, wasting their magicka and removing their most dangerous ally. The spell's effectiveness scales with your conjuration skill, allowing you to banish increasingly powerful Daedra as you advance. Master-level conjurers can banish even the strongest Daedric summons. The spell sees less use than it deserves, because many players prefer killing summons with direct damage, rather than learning a specialized counterspell. But against multiple enemy conjurers, Banish Daedra can completely shut down their combat effectiveness. The Command Daedra level requirement. Command Daedra requires you to complete a brief combat ritual with the targeted Daedra before they fall under your control. You must damage the Daedra enough that they submit to your will. Against weak Daedra like Flame Atronachs, this happens quickly. Against powerful Daedra like Dremora Lords, the required damage is substantial. The spell essentially forces a mini-boss fight against every Daedra you want to control. But once you control a powerful Daedra, you gain an incredibly strong temporary ally. A commanded Dremora Lord fights for you with all its considerable power until the spell duration expires. The effort to reward ratio makes Command Daedra most valuable against the strongest Daedric summons, where the control ritual's difficulty is justified by the power you gain. The Reanimate Dead level scaling. Reanimation spells in Conjuration can raise corpses to fight for you temporarily, but each reanimation spell has a level cap determining which corpses it can affect. Reanimate Corpse works on NPCs up to level 6. Revenant works up to level 21. Dread Zombie works up to level 30. And Dead Thrall, the master level reanimation spell, works on any NPC, regardless of level, and makes them permanent thralls. The level scaling forces necromancers to continually upgrade their reanimation spells to affect the corpses they encounter. But it also means high-level necromancers can raise incredibly powerful enemies as permanent thralls, creating unique follower characters that are otherwise impossible to recruit. The Dead Thrall, permanence. Unlike temporary summons or timed reanimations, Dead Thralls are permanent reanimated corpses that follow you indefinitely. They don't unsummon after 2 minutes. They don't limit your ability to cast other conjuration spells. And if they die, you can simply reanimate the corpse again, using the Dead Thrall spell. This effectively gives you permanent follower slots beyond the normal follower system. Some players create 2 Dead Thralls from particularly powerful enemy corpses, keeping them permanently as undead bodyguards. The thralls can be equipped with better gear, improving their effectiveness. They travel with you everywhere, creating a portable undead army. The power level makes Dead Thrall the ultimate goal for necromancer builds. The ghostly summons visual. Non-Daedric summons in Skyrim often appear ghostly or ethereal rather than fully physical. Summoned animals like wolves or ice wraiths have a translucent quality. Summoned skeletons glow with necrotic energy. These visual effects create thematic consistency, making it clear that your summons are magical constructs rather than natural creatures. But the ghostly appearance serves a gameplay purpose too. In chaotic combat with multiple allies and enemies, the distinctive appearance of summons lets you quickly identify which creatures are yours. The visual clarity prevents accidentally attacking your own summons, though followers sometimes lack this courtesy and attack your summons anyway, interpreting them as hostile creatures. The College questline Magical Exposure. Completing the College of Winterhold questline exposes you to every school of magic through various quests and encounters. You'll use alteration to investigate magical anomalies. You'll witness powerful destruction magic during the conflict with Ancano. You'll interact with conjuration through the Augur of Dunlane. You'll see restoration used to contain the Eye of Magnus. The questline serves as a magical education, even if you're primarily a warrior or thief, showing you the breadth and power of Skyrim's magic system. For players who typically ignore magic, the college quests might inspire them to experiment with spells and magical character builds on subsequent playthroughs. The Arxidol's Ring set. The Dragonborn DLC introduced Arxidol's Armor set, which includes several rings with unique enchanting properties. Arzidal's Ring of Arcana adds 2 useful spells to your repertoire when worn, expanding your magical arsenal without consuming spell slots. Arzidal's Ring of Necromancy makes reanimated undead explode in a frost explosion when they die, or when the reanimation spell expires, turning your zombies into walking bombs. The ring synergizes perfectly with Necromancer builds, adding area damage to an already powerful strategy. Players can wear multiple rings from the set simultaneously if they use console commands or glitches, though this wasn't the intended design. The lore behind Arzidal describes him as one of the first human mages to master elven magical techniques, and his artifacts reflect that deep understanding of arcane principles. The Magic Anomaly Enemies. During the College of Winterhold questline, you encounter magic anomalies, strange floating orbs of destructive energy that attack on sight. These creatures are unique to the questline and represent magical energy that has become unstable and dangerous. The anomalies resist most physical damage, but remain vulnerable to magic, creating an enemy type that forces even weapon-focused characters to use spells or enchanted weapons. They explode violently when killed, dealing area damage that can catch unwary players off guard. The visual design of swirling energy patterns makes them memorable enemies, and their appearance signals that something has gone seriously wrong with the magical energies at the college. After the questline concludes, magic anomalies never appear again, making them unique to that specific narrative moment. The spell-casting animation differences. Different schools of magic have distinct casting animations that help players identify what type of spell an enemy is preparing. Destruction mages thrust their hands forward aggressively, with elemental energy crackling around their hands. Restoration mages raise their hands with gentle, glowing light. Conjuration casters perform elaborate gestures that summon magical circles before their creatures appear. Illusion magic involves sweeping hand movements that seem to manipulate invisible forces. These animation differences serve both aesthetic and gameplay purposes, giving players visual cues about incoming threats and allowing them to prepare appropriate counter strategies based on spell school recognition. The Spell Absorption Healing Ward. When you have high spell absorption chance and cast a ward spell, something interesting happens. Your ward counts as a magical effect, and you can potentially absorb your own ward, which restores magicka instead of providing protection. This creates a situation where high spell absorption actually weakens ward effectiveness, as you're absorbing the protective magic before it can shield you. The interaction represents an unintended consequence of how spell absorption interacts with player cast effects. Most players with high spell absorption skip wards entirely, relying instead on their absorption chance to handle incoming spell damage. The mechanical interaction showcases how different defensive strategies can conflict rather than complement each other. The Conjure Seeker from Apocrypha. In the Dragonborn DLC's Apocrypha realm, you can find the Conjure Seeker spell tome, which summons one of Hermaeus Mora's tentacled servants. The Seeker is a ranged magic attacker that hurls destructive spells at enemies while maintaining distance. Unlike melee-focused summons that charge into combat, the Seeker hangs back and provides magical artillery support. This makes it particularly valuable for players who want summons that won't block doorways or get in the way during close combat. The Seeker's strange, otherworldly appearance adds to the alien aesthetic of Hermaeus Mora's realm, and having one as your permanent companion creates an appropriately weird vibe for knowledge-obsessed mages. The Vampire Lord transformation magic. vampire lords gain access to an entirely separate magic system while transformed. The left hand can cast Vampiric Drain, the blood-absorbing primary attack. The right hand can cast various blood magic spells, including Corpse Curse, which raises dead enemies, and Summon Gargoyle, which calls forth a Stone Guardian. These vampire-specific spells don't exist in the normal spell system, and can only be used while in the Vampire Lord form. The transformation essentially grants a temporary alternative character build with its own progression and abilities. Some players alternate between Human Mage and Vampire Lord depending on the situation, using regular spells for exploration and vampiric powers for combat. The Spell Tome Market availability. Spell Tome availability from merchants follows specific rules based on your skill level in the relevant magic school. Merchants stock novice and apprentice spells regardless of your skill. Adept level spell tomes only appear once you reach level 40 in that magic school. Expert tomes require 65 skill. Master tomes can't be purchased at all until you complete the ritual quests at level 90. This progression gates magical power behind skill investment, ensuring players can't simply buy their way to the strongest spells without developing magical expertise. The system encourages natural progression through the magic schools, though treasure hunting can uncover spell tomes earlier than merchants would sell them. The Ash Guardian creation. The Tel Mithrin Towers in the Dragonborn DLC contain a spell tome for Conjure Ash Guardian, which summons a powerful elemental warrior from the volcanic ash of Solstheim. But there's a catch. If you cast the spell without having a Heartstone in your inventory, the Ash Guardian becomes hostile and attacks you instead of your enemies. With a Heartstone, it serves loyally. Without one, it turns on its summoner. This risk-reward mechanic makes Ash Guardian unique among summoning spells, requiring specific material components to function safely. The lore implications suggest that Heartstones contain binding magic that keeps Ash Guardians under control, and without that binding, they revert to their natural aggressive state. The Necromantic Healing spell. In the base game, healing undead with restoration spells is impossible. Restoration magic heals the living, but doesn't affect the unliving. But the Dawnguard DLC introduced Necromantic Healing, a restoration spell specifically designed to heal undead allies. For players who heavily utilize reanimated corpses or dead thralls, Necromantic Healing provides essential support, keeping their zombies in fighting condition. The spell fills a niche that pure necromancers desperately needed, allowing them to maintain their undead army through extended combat. The existence of necromantic healing also raises interesting lore questions about how the spell was developed and whether it's considered acceptable by the College of Winterhold or viewed as dark magic corruption of healing arts. The Poison Rune area. Denial. Poison Rune from the Dragonborn DLC creates a trap that releases a toxic cloud when triggered. Unlike fire or frost runes that deal instant damage, the poison cloud lingers for several seconds, damaging anything that moves through the area. This creates genuine area denial, rather than a one-time trap effect. Place Poison Rune in doorways or narrow corridors, and enemies must either wait for the cloud to dissipate, or run through it and take damage. The lingering nature makes Poison Rune particularly effective for controlling enemy movement during tactical retreats, or when you need to funnel enemies into kill zones. Creative players combine Poison Rune with other control effects to create deadly combo strategies. The spell cost reduction equipment. Enchanting gear with spell cost reduction for specific magic schools is one of the most important optimizations for dedicated mages. A helmet with 25% reduction to destruction costs, chest armor with 25% restoration reduction, ring with 25% conjuration reduction, and amulet with another school reduction allows you to effectively have reduced costs across your entire magical repertoire. The cost reductions multiply with the corresponding perk effects in each school's skill tree, eventually making spells incredibly cheap or even free to cast. This optimization transforms mages from resource-constrained casters who must carefully manage magicka into magical artillery platforms that can rain spells endlessly. The Elemental Fury incompatibility. The Elemental Fury shout dramatically increases weapon swing speed, effectively giving you more attacks per second. But the shout has a critical restriction. It doesn't work with enchanted weapons. If your weapon has any enchantment at all, Elemental Fury simply fails to activate. This limitation means weapon users must choose between enchanted damage bonuses and attack speed enhancement. For mages, this restriction doesn't matter because bound weapons count as enchanted due to their perk-based soul trap and banish effects. The incompatibility exists for balance reasons, as the combination of increased attack speed and enchantment effects would create overpowered damage output. The Secret Servant Scroll. Hidden in various locations throughout Skyrim, you can find scrolls that cast spells you might not have learned. The Secret Servant Scroll, for instance, casts a conjuration spell that summons a temporary servant to carry items for you, effectively increasing your carry capacity temporarily. These scrolls allow any character to access magical effects regardless of their build or skill investment. Warriors without any magical training can use destruction scrolls to hurl fireballs. Thieves can use invisibility scrolls for critical stealth moments. The scrolls represent emergency magical options available to everyone, though their one-time use nature means they're best saved for critical situations. The Flame Spell Training Method. New mages starting their journey often wonder the best way to level destruction quickly. The Flame Spell, despite being a novice-level continuous damage spell, provides excellent training opportunities. Because it hits multiple times per second, each hit grants a small amount of destruction experience. If you dual cast flames into a group of enemies, you're gaining experience for every enemy hit by each tick of the spell. The continuous nature means you're gaining experience constantly while maintaining the channel. This makes flames one of the most efficient training tools despite its low damage, particularly against tanky enemies that survive long enough for extended channeling. The Equilibrium Health Conversion. The Equilibrium spell converts your health into magicka at a favorable ratio, allowing you to essentially trade hit points for spell casting resources. For mages with strong healing capabilities, Equilibrium provides nearly infinite magicka by converting health to magicka and then healing the damage. The cycle of drain convert, heal convert creates a pseudo-infinite resource loop. Some players use Equilibrium to power level restoration by repeatedly converting health and then healing themselves, training both resource conversion and restoration simultaneously. The spell represents the principle that magical energy and life force can be transmuted into each other, a fundamental axiom of Skyrim's magical cosmology. The Circle of Protection Magic. Circle of Protection is a self-centered area effect spell that damages undead standing near you. The spell creates a holy aura that continually harms zombies, skeletons, draugr, and vampires within melee range. For restoration mages facing undead hordes, Circle of Protection provides passive damage while allowing you to focus on healing or more direct attacks. The spell synergizes well with turn undead effects, as fleeing undead often run through your protective circle and take additional damage while retreating. The combination of protection and offense in one spell makes it valuable for exploring gnawed barrows and other undead-infested locations. The Soul Cairn's unique spells. The Soul Cairn in the Dawnguard DLC contains several unique spell tomes found nowhere else in Skyrim. Summon Boneman, Summon Mistman, and Summon Wrathman all call forth special undead warriors native to the Soul Cairn. These summons have different capabilities than normal reanimated corpses or standard conjuration summons. The Bone Man is an archer, the Mistman is a mage, and the Wrathman is a melee fighter. Together, they provide a versatile summon option for different combat situations. Their visual design is distinctly supernatural, appearing more ghostly and ethereal than corporeal, fitting for creatures from a realm of trapped souls. The Dawnbreaker's explosive undead. While not technically a spell, the Dawnbreaker sword has magical properties that interact with Skyrim's magic system. When you kill an undead enemy with Dawnbreaker, it has a chance to explode and cause nearby undead to flee in terror. This explosion effect functions like area effect restoration magic, even though it's triggered by a weapon strike. The sword effectively combines martial combat with magical crowd control, making it one of the most powerful weapons against undead opponents. The explosion and fear effect can chain through groups of Draga, creating devastating combo moments where a single kill triggers a cascade of explosions and fleeing enemies. The college's restoration teacher. Colette Marens, the restoration instructor at the College of Winterhold, provides training and sells restoration spell tomes. But she's also one of the few NPCs who openly acknowledges the prejudice against restoration magic within the mage community. Many mages view restoration as inferior or less intellectually stimulating compared to destruction or alteration. Colette's dialogue reveals her frustration with this attitude, defending restoration as a vital and complex school of magic. Her character provides insight into the social dynamics within the college, where different schools of magic maintain informal hierarchies and practitioners advocate for their specialties. The Bound Battle Axe. Weakness. Among the bound weapons, the Bound Battle Axe stands out as the weakest relative to its weapon category. While the Bound Sword matches Daedric swords and the Bound Bow matches Daedric bows, the Bound Battle Axe with the Mystic Binding perk only matches glass battle axe damage, not Daedric. This discrepancy means two-handed weapon users get less benefit from bound weapons compared to one-handed or archery users. The unofficial patch fixes this oversight, bringing bound battle axe damage up to Daedric equivalent. But in the base game, the weaker battle axe damage makes it less attractive for conjuration-focused two-handed warriors. The Chain Lightning Jumping. Chain Lightning is an expert-level destruction spell that jumps between targets, hitting multiple enemies with a single cast. The spell intelligently targets the nearest eligible enemies, prioritizing threats that are close together. Against groups of tightly packed enemies, Chain Lightning can hit 6 or more targets from a single cast, making it one of the most magicka-efficient area damage spells in the game. The visual effect of electricity arcing between targets creates satisfying feedback, and the mechanical efficiency makes it a favorite spell for destruction mages facing multiple opponents. The spell's smart targeting means you don't need to manually aim at each enemy like you would with Fireball. The Ice Spike Projectile. Ice Spike launches a frozen projectile that deals damage and has a chance to paralyze the target briefly. The projectile is physical, meaning it obeys physics and can miss fast-moving targets. But the projectile projectile also has significant knockback force, often staggering enemies and interrupting their attacks even if they resist the paralysis. The stagger effect makes Ice Spike valuable for crowd control beyond its direct damage, particularly against rushing melee enemies. The spell fills a middle ground between area effects like Ice Storm and single target precision like Ice Spear, providing solid damage with occasional control benefits. The invisibility duration inconsistency. The invisibility spell lasts 30 seconds at its base form, while certain invisibility potions can last much longer, depending on your alchemy skill. This creates an interesting decision point. Invest in illusion magic for renewable but shorter invisibility, or invest in alchemy for longer duration but consumable invisibility. Illusion specialists with cost reduction gear can effectively cast invisibility constantly, creating near-permanent invisibility at no resource cost. Alchemists can create minutes-long invisibility potions, but must continually gather ingredients and craft new potions. The different approaches to achieving the same effect demonstrate Skyrim's build diversity. The Frenzy Chaos. Frenzy spells cause targets to attack everything around them, friend and foe alike. Against groups of bandits, a well-placed frenzy spell turns the group into a chaotic brawl where they kill each other while you watch from safety. But frenzy has interesting applications beyond simple crowd control. Casting it on powerful enemies like giants can cause them to attack nearby enemy groups, essentially recruiting them as temporary allies. The spell creates emergent gameplay moments where you manipulate enemy behavior to your advantage rather than directly fighting. Master-level mayhem takes this concept to its extreme, turning entire areas into massive melees. The Fortified Destruction Potion Amplification. Fortified Destruction Potions increase the damage of destruction spells significantly during their duration, but they work best when combined with dual casting and the appropriate augmented element perks. A maxed out destruction mage drinking a Fortified Destruction Potion can deal absolutely devastating damage, potentially killing dragon in seconds with sustained spell assault. The potion essentially amplifies your already substantial magical power to ridiculous extremes. Smart players craft these potions before major boss fights or challenging encounters, using them as a damage steroid that temporarily elevates their offensive capabilities. The Bound Sword Dual Wield. Unlike real weapons, where you need to own 2 copies to dual wield, casting Bound Sword twice creates 2 identical weapons. This makes Bound Sword particularly attractive for dual-wielding one-handed fighters, as you get a full Daedric equivalent weapon loadout from a single spell. The weightlessness of bound weapons means you're never encumbered by your armament. Combined with the Soul Stealer perk that gives both swords automatic soul trap, dual-wielding bound swords becomes an incredibly efficient combat style that costs nothing in carry weight and automatically fills soul gems while you fight. The Apprentice Stone. Double-edged. The Apprentice Standing Stone increases your magicka regeneration by 100%, while also making you 100% more vulnerable to magical damage. The trade-off creates a high-risk, high-reward scenario for mages. Your increased magicka regeneration allows more aggressive spellcasting, but any enemy mage becomes twice as dangerous to you. The stone rewards skilled play, where you avoid taking magical damage through positioning, ward use, or crowd control, while punishing players who face tank enemy spells. Some players use the Apprentice Stone only during non-combat exploration, then switch to safer stones before dangerous fights. The Frostbreath Shout Synergy. The Frostbreath Shout deals frost damage and slows enemies significantly, functioning like a magical frost spell, but using shout mechanics instead of magicka. For mages, this provides an emergency frost attack that doesn't consume magical resources. The slow effect from frost breath stacks with slow effects from frost spells, creating extreme movement reduction that makes enemies almost immobile. Against fast enemies like saber cats or aggressive melee fighters, combining frost breath with frost spells creates layers of slow that effectively root them in place, allowing you to kite them indefinitely while dealing damage. The Whirlwind Cloak Physics. The Whirlwind Cloak spell from the Dragonborn DLC creates a swirling wind effect around your character that staggers nearby enemies. But the physics force applied by the wind can actually launch lightweight objects and small creatures through the air. Fighting in areas with loose items creates a tornado of debris swirling around you. Small creatures like skeevers can be lifted off their feet by the wind force. The environmental interaction makes Whirlwind Cloak one of the most visually dynamic cloak spells, creating chaos beyond simple damage numbers. The Calm spell applications. The Calm spell stops hostile creatures from attacking you for 30 seconds, making them pacified and non-aggressive. This creates opportunities for mercy or simply avoiding combat entirely. Some quests require you to reach specific locations without killing certain enemies. Calm allows you to pass through without violence. The spell also works on animals, allowing you to pacify aggressive wildlife without harming it, useful for role-playing hunters or druids who respect nature and life. The Detect Dead mystery. Detect Dead reveals undead creatures through walls and obstacles, similar to how Detect Life reveals living creatures. In a world where detecting undead is valuable for planning approaches to Nordic tombs and vampire lairs, the spell sees surprisingly little use. Most players never learn it exists because it's overshadowed by Detect Life. The spell specifically highlights Draugr, skeletons, vampires, and other undead, helping you anticipate ambushes in undead-heavy dungeons. The Stoneflesh combat preparation. The Stoneflesh spell and its more powerful variants provide armor rating bonuses for a duration. But unlike armor you wear, these spells can be cast before entering combat and will remain active throughout the fight. Smart mages buff themselves with mage armor before opening doors or entering new areas. The 60-second duration ensures your defensive magic covers entire encounters. This pre-buffing strategy separates skilled mages from novices. The Flame Atronach reliability. The Flame Atronach is often the first non-familiar summon that players acquire, and it remains relevant surprisingly late into the game. The Flame Atronach's range fire attacks and decent health pool make it a reliable summon through most of Skyrim's content. Even when more powerful summons become available, the relatively low magicka cost and quick cast time keep Flame Atronach relevant throughout your entire playthrough. The Ebony Mail Poison Aura. The Ebony Mail artifact armor provides poison-based magical effects similar to cloak spells, continuously damaging nearby enemies with poison. But unlike the cloak spells that you cast and maintain with magicka, the Ebony Mail's poison aura is always active when worn and costs nothing to maintain. This creates a passive damage source that adds to your combat effectiveness automatically, particularly valuable for melee characters. The Shalidor's Insights. Questline. In the College of Winterhold, the librarian Urag Gro Shub offers a radiant quest to find Shalidor's manuscripts scattered across Skyrim. These ancient texts contain magical knowledge from one of Skyrim's legendary archmages. Each manuscript you return increases your skill in a random magic school, providing free skill increases as quest rewards. The lore implications suggest Shalidor's knowledge was so vast that fragments of his writings noticeably improve a mage's capabilities. The Frost Atronach tank, the Frost Atronach summon, has significantly more health than Flame or Storm Atronachs, making it the tankiest elemental summon. While Flame Atronachs deal damage from range and Storm Atronachs provide fast attacks, Frost Atronachs can absorb tremendous punishment while dealing respectable melee damage for conjurers who want summons to draw enemy aggression and protect the caster. Frost Atronach is the premier choice. The Courage spell buffs. The Courage spell and its more powerful variants increase your allies' combat effectiveness, making them deal more damage and resist fear effects. When cast on followers, these buffs can significantly improve their performance in combat. A Courage-buffed follower becomes noticeably more aggressive and effective, helping clear enemies faster. The spell's duration is generous enough to cover entire dungeon sections with a single cast. The Paralyzed duration extension. With the stability perk in Alteration, Paralyzed duration increases from 10 to 15 seconds. This might seem like a small increase, but in practice it's the difference between enemies recovering mid-combat and remaining helpless throughout entire encounter sequences. The extended duration allows you to paralyze one dangerous enemy and completely eliminate their allies before the paralyzed target recovers. The Mayhem City Chaos. Casting Mayhem in populated areas like cities creates absolute chaos as dozens of NPCs turn on each other. Guards attack citizens. Merchants fight blacksmiths. The entire social order collapses into violence. Essential NPCs can't die, so they'll survive the mayhem. But non-essential NPCs can be killed by their former neighbors. The aftermath leaves cities depopulated and forever changed. The Wobberjack Complete Randomness. The Wobberjack is a staff artifact that applies completely random effects to targets. One use might turn an enemy into a sweet roll. Another might transform them into a powerful Dremora that attacks you. Yet another might heal them, disintegrate them, or turn them into a chicken. The complete unpredictability makes the Wobberjack simultaneously useless and entertaining, creating memorable moments through pure chaos. The Storm Atronach Chain Lightning. Storm Atronachs summon with the ability to cast Chain Lightning, making them excellent against groups of enemies. Their spell attacks deal solid damage and can hit multiple targets, providing area effect offense that other elemental Atronachs lack. Against enemy groups like bandits or Forsworn, a Storm Atronach's Chain Lightning can wound entire groups before your own attacks even land. The Ash Shell Tactical Freezing. Freezing enemies in ash with the Ash Shell spell not only removes them from combat, but also protects them from all damage. You can Ash Shell the most dangerous enemy in a group and safely eliminate their weaker allies. You can Ash Shell enemies near edges and then use unrelenting force to shout them off cliffs when the ash breaks. The spell provides controlled pauses in combat. The Lightning Bolt Precision Strike. Lightning Bolt is a straight-line projectile spell that travels instantly to its target, making it the most accurate destruction spell for hitting distant or moving enemies. Unlike fireballs that have travel time or ice spikes that can be dodged, lightning connects instantly when you click the cast button. This makes Lightning Bolt ideal for sniping archers on distant towers or hitting fast-moving enemies. The Close Wounds Emergency Healing. Close Wounds is an expert-level restoration spell that heals a large amount of health quickly. For self-healing, it's more efficient than Grand Healing or similar spells because it's targeted entirely on yourself rather than being an area effect. The spell provides burst healing that can save you during intense combat, bringing you from near death to full health in seconds. The Fenric's Welcome Theft. Fenric's Welcome from the Anniversary Edition provides 5 seconds of invisibility and automatically unlocks expert level locks. 5 seconds doesn't sound like much, but in practice it's enough time to open a chest, grab contents, and escape. The spell enables smash and grab theft, where you turn invisible, unlock and loot a container, and vanish before guards react. The Healing Hands support role. Healing Hands is a restoration spell that heals other targets rather than yourself. For players who adventure with followers, Healing Hands allows you to keep your companions alive through dangerous fights. Followers who would otherwise die and become unavailable can be sustained through healing magic, creating true support mage builds. The Invisibility Pickpocket combination. Combining invisibility with high pickpocket skill allows you to steal items directly from people's pockets while invisible. The invisibility greatly reduces detection chance, making even difficult pickpocket attempts much safer. You can rob people in broad daylight with little risk, creating a magical thief archetype. The Telekinesis Distance Manipulation. The Telekinesis spell allows you to grab and manipulate objects from surprising distances. The range extends well beyond normal interaction distance, letting you grab items from across large rooms or from heights you couldn't normally reach. Creative players use telekinesis to solve jumping puzzles by moving objects to create platforms. The Conjuration Skill Books. Throughout Skyrim, 5 skill books increase your conjuration skill when read. The Doors of Oblivion, Liminal Bridges, 2920, Hearthfire, The Warrior's Charge, and 2920 Frostfall each provide a single level in conjuration. For dedicated conjurers, hunting these books provides free skill advancement without grinding spell casts. The books are scattered across Skyrim in various locations, some hidden in dangerous dungeons and others sitting on easily accessible shelves. Finding and reading all 5 grants 5 free conjuration levels, a significant boost for low-level characters or players trying to reach specific perk thresholds. The Alteration Skill Books. Similarly, 5 Alteration Skill Books exist throughout Skyrim. Daughter of the Niben, Reality and Other Falsehoods, Racial Phylogeny, the Lunar Lorcan, and Sithis provide alteration skill increases when read. These books cover diverse topics from creation myths to anatomical studies reflecting the philosophical breadth of alteration magic. The Lunar Lorcan in particular offers fascinating lore about the moons and their relationship to Nirn. For mages seeking to power level alteration without spamming, detect life or armor spells, collecting these books jumpstarts progression. The Destruction Skill Books. 5 Destruction Skill Books scattered across Skyrim include A Hypothetical Treachery, The Art of War Magic, Mystery of Talara Volumes, and Horror of Castle Zexia. These books provide free destruction skill increases and often contain surprisingly good reads. The Art of War Magic discusses tactical applications of offensive spellcasting. Mystery of Talara tells an engaging story while teaching destruction principles. Hunting these books provides both character advancement and entertaining lore, making them worth seeking for any destruction-focused mage. The Illusion Skill Books. The 5 Illusion Skill Books are 2920 Sun's Dawn, Before the Ages of Man, Incident at Necrom, The Refugees, and Reality and Other Falsehoods. These books explore themes of perception, manipulation, and the nature of reality itself, befitting the Illusion School's focus on altering minds and appearances. The Refugees tells a particularly touching story about displacement and survival. For illusion mages, These books provide valuable skill boosts in a school that can be tedious to level through regular gameplay. The Restoration Skill Books. 5 Restoration Skill Books exist. 2920 Rain's Hand, Exodus, The Exodus, Withershins, and Racial Phylogeny. These books cover topics from healing techniques to religious philosophy, reflecting restoration's dual nature as both medical science and divine magic. Reading all 5 provides significant progression toward mastering restoration. For players who find restoration boring to level through combat healing, these books offer welcome shortcuts to reaching the restoration perks and spells needed for effective magical support. The Enchanting Skill Books. 5 enchanting skill books can be found. A Tragedy in Black, Catalogue of Armor Enchantments, Catalogue of Weapon Enchantments, Enchanter's Primer, and Twin Secrets. These books teach principles of magical item creation and energy infusion. The catalogues provide systematic approaches to enchanting different item types. For enchanters, these books offer faster progression toward the crucial perks like extra effect that unlock enchanting's true power. Finding them early accelerates your path to creating powerful custom equipment. The Magnus Staff Power. The Staff of Magnus appears during the College of Winterhold questline as a crucial artifact for containing the Eye of Magnus. But beyond its plot importance, the staff functions as a powerful absorption tool. When used in combat, it drains enemy magicka while restoring yours, effectively stealing their magical power. Against enemy mages, this creates a resource advantage where you gain power as they lose it. The staff's absorption effect makes it particularly valuable in mage versus mage combat, turning enemy spellcaster's strength into your advantage. After the college questline, you retain the staff, providing a permanent magicka draining tool. The Dragon Priest Mask Effects. Several Dragon Priest masks provide magical bonuses that enhance spellcasting capabilities. Morake reduces all spell costs by 100 magicka, though this has odd interactions with percentage-based cost reductions. Nakreen fortifies magicka and reduces destruction and restoration costs. Crosis fortifies magicka, lockpicking, and alchemy. Each mask provides unique combinations of magical enhancement, making them valuable equipment for specialized mage builds. The masks represent ancient Nord magical tradition, predating even the College of Winterhold's founding. Collecting them becomes a long-term goal for many mage characters. The Archmage's Robes benefits. Upon becoming Archmage of the College of Winterhold, you receive the Archmage's Robes. These robes reduce spell costs for all schools of magic by 15%, provide 50 additional magicka, and grant 100% faster magicka regeneration. For pure mages, the Archmage's Robes represent one of the best unenchanted armor pieces in the game. The universal spell cost reduction works across all magic schools, benefiting versatile mages who use multiple types of magic. Combined with additional enchanted gear, the robes form the foundation of powerful endgame mage equipment loadouts. Thank you for journeying with me tonight, Cozy Knights. If this story helped you rest, consider leaving a like. It helps other weary travelers find their way to our fireside. And remember, there are many more tales waiting for you here by the fire. So don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next adventure. Until next time, sleep peacefully and have a cozy night.